Hey guys, my name is Jacob Daughter. I'll be doing chapter 5 over understanding culture. Try to get through this in 5 to 6 minutes. We'll start off on page 135 where it says, "What is culture?" Give you a quick little definition of it. Culture is an established, coherent set of beliefs, attitudes, values, and practices shared by a large group of people. It's pretty self-explanatory. It is learned, communicated, layered, and lived. So that means there's multiple aspects to it. You have to live through your culture, which is something that you do every single day. If you're Hispanic, if you're Native American, you are living and you live with other Hispanics and Native Americans. That is your culture, and that is something that you live every day. Same thing with even white people. We have our own culture in a way. We can make jokes. Some of the funniest jokes in the world are the difference between how white people and black people react. Those are some of my favorite things because it is true. There is a difference in the way that different people with different skin colors have this attribute towards their culture that makes them unique, and I find that to be very interesting. So we start learning culture immediately after being born, and you can find that on page 136, down at the bottom where it says culture is learned. It also says culture is communicated. So each culture has its own practice regarding how to communicate, and these can widely differ from one another. It's pretty cool. So, culture is also layered. We belong to more than just one culture, right? So I'm not just my culture is one thing, but I go to school and it's different, and I'm around a more diverse group of people, and I see that there are different cultures. If I go, let's say the fair's coming up, the Tulsa State Fair's coming up, I promise, if you go there, you're gonna see these layers of culture within the people, and they call it people watching. I like to people watch. Most importantly for me, culture is lived. It is something that you see every day in your life. It affects who you are. This really, one of the big things is this can create prejudice by what you see and not really thinking about it. So these things called co-cultures, I have a hard time saying that. Read this real quick. As societies become more culturally diverse, awareness of how various cultures and groups of people within them interact increases. So there's this theory called the co-cultural communication theory. So the people who have more power within a society determine the dominant culture because they get to decide the prevailing views, values, and traditions of the society. Consider the United States. Throughout its history, wealthy Euro-American men have been in power. It's true. It is true. Most of the people, most of the wealth in this country that is centered at the top are older white men. Moving on, prejudice. This is the nasty part about it. So this is, we move away, we shy away from interacting with people who are outside of our group because of these stereotypes that we've formed about these people, and we attribute that to them immediately without doing anything else, without trying to get to know the person. So it says, at bottom of page 141, it says, because prejudice is rooted in stereotypes, it can vary depending on whether those stereotypes are positive or negative. That's something that's pretty cool. Make sure on my time here. So, another part of being prejudiced, prejudice is benevolent prejudice, which I find to be super interesting because this occurs when people think of a particular group as inferior, but also friendly and competent. So pretty much saying they're too dumb for their own good. I hate that. I hate it. Hostile prejudice happens when people have negative attitudes towards a group of individuals whom they see as unfriendly and incompetent. So that's more like the nasty, mucky racism, pretty much, that we see nowadays. Next is the individualism versus collectivism debate. So individualist countries like America, Canada, New Zealand, Sweden we really think about ourselves And this self-priority is big, self-achievement is large, but in these collectivistic cultures like Japan and China, it is more of a we than a me type of deal. And that is one of the reasons why you do see more successful people in our cultures, is because of this individualism, where we want to take over and do good for ourselves. Other cultures, you can't really do that. All right, so power distance, I feel like this is probably one of the more important. This is the degree to which people in a particular culture view the unequal distribution of power as acceptable. What does that mean? Okay, so these high power distant cultures like Russia, Panama, Guatemala, Philippines, Mexico, Venezuela, and China, these high power distance cultures is considered normal and even desirable for people of different social and professional status to have different levels of power. In such cultures, people give privileged treatment and extreme respect to those in high status positions. They also expect individuals of lesser status to behave humbly, especially around people of higher status. It's a little bit different here in America. You know, you see a celebrity or something, a lot of people are going to freak out, but it's not really expected for everybody to sit there and go crazy. And some people just don't care. Like, really don't care if they see somebody famous out. It's totally different between our two cultures. Just to give you an example though, moderate power distant countries would be ours, South Africa, Spain. Low power distant countries, Norway, Sweden, New Zealand, Denmark, our usual suspects. So high context and low context cultures, they can, these cultures like China, Korea, and Japan, these are where people presume that others within the culture will share their viewpoints automatically, instead of here in a low context culture where we don't necessarily think that and we try to persuade others to think differently. Emotional displays, there are display rules that are actually very strict, regulate really even how much you smile. You know, these nonverbal communication cues, you raise your eyes, you roll them, you squint, you look angry. Those are emotional displays, and each culture has a different understanding and almost a level to how much you can do. There's also masculinity versus femininity. It's like saying anonymity. So this is another dimension along with cultures that differs and impacts interpersonal communication, and this is to the degree to which masculine versus feminine values are emphasized. We know that there's difference between the values of a man and the values of a woman. A lot of them are older, that are still hanging around. We can see that men and women are both taking up different values. Some women want to be viewed more as a leader or someone who can run a company, and we're starting to see that a little bit more. Men are starting to, I wouldn't say get softer, but maybe get more in touch with who they are. One of the cool things is how different cultures view time. Monochronic time orientation cultures, they view time as a resource. America is one of those. So it can be saved, spent, wasted, lost, or made up, and can even run out. Then there's polychronic time orientated cultures such as Saudi Arabia, I believe France was one of them. These are, they don't view time like what we do. They kind of view it as just a number, really. If you tell them to show up at 10:30, if you need to be gone at 10:30 here in America, somebody's going to be here at 10:30, but they'll probably be there at like 11:15. They like to take a little bit of their time. M&P individuals don't really get together that well. Let's see here. Yeah, and so the next would be embracing differences, and that's the one thing that we have to do better, is to embrace one another in a much more mature and honest way to where we get to know each other. So hopefully you guys learned something. I try my best. Thank you.